I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. It is so hard to get sober, and there's those first few moments and days and weeks when you get sober are painful. At least they were for me, Steve. Sometimes we talk about this stuff so much we forget, why do we keep doing this? There must be something great about being sober that you might not realize. Back in the day, I used to watch Imus on MSNBC because I guess I'm older than I thought I was, and I was fascinated more about radio shows on TV to see how a radio show actually worked. And he talked about being sober. And I just thought if you're sober, it's sort of like you can hold your breath longer than somebody else, or you cross your legs in a certain way, like if you got to go pee-pee. But it's not. Things are really good. And I thought about this because on Monday night, there are these two guys who come to our meeting because their meeting closed down, Gordon and Mike. And what made me think about this is Mike said Gordon is his best friend, which was shocking to me because you have one guy who's kind of very artistic, kind of just says whatever comes to his mind. Nice guy, but he's more spontaneous with what he says. And Gordon doesn't say much of anything. But when Gordon talks, what he has to say is so damn important and serious. Because I've gone to meetings with Gordon, and it's been like months before I've heard him open his mouth. He's listening, but when he actually has to open his mouth, it's always good. And Gordon is a mechanic. Blue collar as blue collar could be. Mike is an artist, as artistic as you might think. But they're best friends. And that made me think of these things that are great about sobriety, that you can end up with a best friend who is so different than you because the one thing that you have in common is that sobriety piece, and that being the only thing. And there's like a whole bunch of other things, but that made me think about it. Like, what's great that you can almost brag about when you're sober?
A couple things you said is, first thing is how difficult those early days of sobriety can be.
Yeah, they suck.
And they can, right? And they do. They suck because if you're somebody who really struggled with alcohol, where you couldn't go more than a few days or maybe even a few hours with alcohol, trying to figure out how to get through those first few days and then weeks and then months, it's really, really tough. I will say this for me, and I've said this before, the first few years were tough for me. And not because so much of the drinking, but because so much of the other stuff that I was dragging around with me. And it is amazing that I think what happens, and we talk about it all the time, and it's talked about in our program all the time, is there has to be a point which we surrender, right? And that gets us to say, listen, I'm willing to try this, or willing to do whatever it is to get better. And once you start really working this program, at least from my experience and from most of the experience of the people that I know who have stuck around this program, the things you get out of it are so much bigger than you can ever imagine. So much bigger. Our literature tell us we're a lot that typically wouldn't mix, right? That's what you're saying about Mike and Gordon. Like you would be surprised, And I think you find a lot of relationships like that, a lot of relationships in this program, because we're bonded by that alcoholism. And first of all, we have to be non-judgmental, because that person who we may disagree with on a lot of aspects of our life and how we live our life may be the person we need in a moment. So we have to allow that stuff to go by the wayside for the most part. Again, there's exceptions to those rules. But so you get a lot of these strange bedfellows and friendships because of, the shared misery that we've had. And all I can tell you is that, and you've heard this before, you may have heard it on this podcast if you're a faithful listener. Sorry. But if I got just what I wanted out of this program, I would have sold myself way short. I mean, there are things that have happened in my life that I just couldn't even understand. Like, I couldn't even realize. And some of them are really, really small things, like friendships, right? Like friendships. Mm-hmm. Like, listen,
That's a pretty big one.
Right. And they are, and that is a big one. And we talk about it with John and I. John and I met in this program and went to meetings, and I did not know John well. I didn't do much with him. And then one day I heard him talking about hiking, and I always wanted to hike, although I never did, much. And next thing you know, John and I are, huge hiking buddies. I mean, we hike all the time together. And that's one of those friendships, one of those unique friendships. And just like other people, like John and I, there's a lot of things we don't agree on, or we don't mix on, right? There's a lot of different things, but the important stuff we do, right? If John needs me, I'm there. If I need him, he's there. All right. And I'll tell you, just on that subject, it's allowed me to have a lot of patience and understanding of people who I don't agree with. This program, that's one of the benefits of this program. It's allowed me to sort of navigate some of those uncomfortable places in life that we all get to, and like, oh wow, this person actually believes that, or says that, or feels that way. It allows me to be a lot less judgmental in those situations than I ever was in my whole life.
I see those as superficial differences now. So if your political beliefs are different than mine, that's on the surface, mm-hmm. because down under it, our views on sobriety are the same, if not similar. Right. And that's enough to bond over. And I can have a political argument with somebody who believes different things without having an argument. Not an argument, but more of like a discussion, a political discussion of, tell me more. I'm just kind of interested why you believe that. And you can actually listen to somebody without being offended, or that doesn't have to come up and you still have plenty of other things to talk about.
Yeah.
I sat next to somebody in a beach meeting who was an Orthodox Jew. She was kind of dressed head to toe in black, and she was taking notes in her book in Hebrew. And I'm sitting next to this woman in a meeting, and we had enough to talk about regardless, because we had one thing in common, that we were both sick and suffering. And that difference was superficial. I don't think I've ever, until right now, been able to articulate that.
Yeah.
The differences feel superficial.
And I think they are, right? Some people would argue that this day and age they're probably not, but I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, is that those aren't the important things that I look at. Because like you said, the truth is we can have conversations about that if we so choose to, if we choose to do that. But there's just so many other things. I mean, you talked about going out for some sushi tonight, just being able to have, just being able to have that family time. That's solid quality family time, right? Not the crazy family time. I mean, I could have told you years and years ago during my dry drunk that I had family time going on, but it wasn't quality family time, or if I was drinking, because I was able to not drink when I was doing some family stuff, but I was always thinking about drinking, so I wasn't happy then either. But this day and age, I mean, got 2 grandkids coming up from New Jersey. They'll be here tomorrow night, and then my son, his 2 kids will be up, and my daughter will be up over the weekend many, many times. And, I just text a picture I had of those 2 kids, and like, Papa can't wait till you get here, right? I'm like, and that's the truth. Like, I can't wait until they get here.
Oh, that's the good stuff.
Awesome, fun, exhausting, all those things, But I can't wait. I can't wait till they get here. I can't wait to spend the next 4 or 5 days with them. And then, and when it comes time for them to go home next Thursday or next Wednesday, I'll be happy that they're going because I'll be tired. And
you can take a nap.
Yeah, I'm taking a nap. Taking a nap during the day, probably. So, but some of the things are just so beautiful. And, and then obviously it's just, it's the blessings of waking up in the morning. I wake up in the morning now, and it's like, I haven't even thought about, waking up feeling sick from drinking, like feeling bad, whether it's physically sick or emotionally sick or mentally sick. Like just not having that feeling is just incredible. It really is an incredible feeling to wake up and be free from worrying about that.
We talked a lot about this at dinner because I was fleshing out a topic. And we went to a little hole-in-the-wall sushi joint near me, and it was fantastic. And my wife looked through the wine list, and she's like, oh, sake. I didn't know you could have it warm and cold. And I'm like, I only remember it being warm, but cold, I guess. But the thing was, here's what I was free from. I was free from thinking about, because I would have had to have a drink there because it was a special occasion. And because we went out early enough to dinner that we did like a 5 p.m. dinner, because it was early enough, I would have to continue drinking at home. Or if I didn't, I would be miserable for the rest of the night. It would have been a demarcation on the day where there was a pivot. I didn't have to worry about that. Yeah. And that's a great feeling that I feel free from that. And on a side note, I'm free from that bill. I could order an additional cut roll instead of buying a beer or sake or whatever the hell it would be.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. I mean, that's exactly the way I drank too. Like I said, I could actually absolutely go out to dinner, even if it was just my wife and I, go out to dinner and have a drink or 2 drinks and be done with it, because, I was always concerned about drinking and driving. No, I shouldn't say always, that would be untrue, but most of the times I was. And but I would always
on my mind.
I would always go back home and finish the job, right? Once I got home, I'd like, okay, now I got to go finish the job. And I've talked about it before. It's like I would stay up as late as I needed to stay up. Like if there was something in between that I didn't feel like drinking in front of my wife, because a lot of times I wouldn't, then I would wait till she went to bed. And if she went to bed at 9 o'clock, then I would start my heavy drinking at 9 o'clock and get where I needed to go. That's just the way it was. And again, to be free of that obsession over alcohol and that, it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And if you struggle, if you think about that, if you're out there listening to this and these are things that sort of are piquing your interest, like, hey, yeah, I feel that way sometimes too, then it might, you might be having some difficulties with this alcohol thing, and you may need to really find yourself a program,
I always was terrified of being pulled over. So one of the things that's great is if I know there's a DUI checkpoint, I almost want to drive through it. Yeah. Almost to brag. I have no worry of DUI checkpoints or being out late or coming home from somewhere and worrying, if I get pulled over, is there going to be a problem? Right. If I get pulled over now, it's because a blinker is out.
Right.
Or I drove too fast.
Yep.
Not because it is something that might get me a couple $100s in a ticket, not land me in jail.
Right.
And I know for certainty that's going to be the case, because I'm not going to throw a punch at a police officer.
Right.
So I know for certainty when I'm driving, I'm probably not going to get arrested.
It was interesting. I never thought about it before. I was arrested for a DUI back in the 70s, right, when I was 19 years old. And what happened was I was arrested, and then I got a lawyer, and it got pleaded down to reckless driving. Well, I don't know what the rules were. I'm assuming it was the same back then, but reckless driving is a felony. And I can remember filling out applications like saying, have you ever been arrested for a felony? And I would always put no, because I don't know if I ever realized it was a felony. That's what you face out there, right? Today you go to jail, right? You go,
yeah.
I mean,
it's in business now.
Yeah, second, third, certainly the third one you go to jail. You go to jail. There's no pass and go on that one. You get out of your first one with some. Yeah, it's big time now. So I'm pleased with that. We go all the time. My wife's like your wife. She'll go out and have a glass of wine, maybe 2 on a certain night. So I'm always driving, and it's fine because she drinks like a normal person, and she can have a couple glasses of wine and doesn't have to worry about it. So the beautiful thing, it's the beautiful thing. The other thing is we talked about it, right? Is that talked about it a little bit of last week's show, but with my brother passing, I had a lot of work to do, right? I was the one sort of who was checked up on, who had to do all the arrangements. There's only 3 of us left now, and it sort of fell on me. And the fact that I'm able to do that today, and the fact that I'm able to do that without resentment today, right, is a blessing, because I would have done all the things I've done today. But I might have been pissed off about it because I got two other siblings, and I would be like, well, what are you guys doing? So I'm able to do so many more things today and do them with gratitude. I mean, I'm happy that I could do that for my brother. Do them with gratitude and with grace, and not be all tied up in some of the other emotions that I had my whole life, that I struggled with my whole life.
That is another positive, is that comfort with emotion. I had a talk with one of my employees today, and she is in a situation where her dad is hurting. Her dad reconnected with his mother after a long time. He was given up for adoption because she had him when she was very, 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 very young. And he was in foster care and got adopted, and eventually they connected. But the rest of the family never accepted him. But the mom did, and now the mom is gone, and those people around who never accepted him are asserting things. And because she is his daughter by association, she's also shunned. And this is very painful for her. And I could have a conversation where I was empathetic and listen and be present, which is what I think she needed. And she mentioned, I'm just not very good with death. My answer is, nobody's good with death. There's nobody out there who has, I'm really good at when people die. But there's a comfort in knowing I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable in those situations, which wouldn't be the case before. Now it's like, yeah, nobody's good with death. So if I'm awkward in those situations, I'm going to be okay with it. And I'm not going to judge myself. I'm going to do my best. And that is something that never would have been possible before I got sober. That's not you get comfortable with that because it's a side effect of putting down the booze. It's like your liver heals and you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It is, you learn some tools when you get sober. And that's what feels good.
Right. Not only you learn some tools, I think you're more apt to try to do things, right? You're more apt. I mean, our program directs us in that way. So, but you're more apt to try some things and to try feeling like that. Listen, we talk about it. I talk about it. I was the problem. I am the problem. I always will be the problem. It's a selfish, we all came in here, many of us came in here very selfish. If in no other parts, at least about our drinking, I was selfish with a lot of things. So when I got sober and I got this program and I decided to do this program and then live this program, right? So what we're talking about is living this program. Then I had to make myself less selfish. And so that's being there for people. We had a friend, speaking of that, we have I mentioned it. We had a friend, my wife had a friend, and it was my friend too, who had come to some meetings at that Monday night meeting with me back in 2017 and knew she had a problem, raised her hand, signed our book, did all that stuff, but did not want the program. And in the last year or two has been drinking very heavily, and she passed away on Sunday. And one of the other friend, there's another woman there's three of them who were really good friends and growing up, came to my door yesterday, came to our door, and my wife was taking a nap, and she came in, and I looked at her, I'm like, is everything okay? And she said no. And she told me that Sarah had passed away. I was able to stand there and give her a moment and give her a hug. And big thing is not try to fix it, right? Not try to say anything about it. Just be present. And that's such a big difference for me. And then get her in there, get her a drink of water, and let her and my wife chat. They've known each other since 7th grade, and let them get together. And that's who, they went out to dinner. Two of them went out to dinner tonight. Let them have their time. And, it's a big loss. I mean, this woman who came, her name is Kathy, came over, and she had known this woman since 3rd grade, It's a long friendship, right? These are women. These are women in their 70s, and long friendship. So a big loss for them, but even they understand that it's over now. It's the road she chose. She's at peace. But my point is that I was able to do the next right thing, which wasn't much. It was just being a little bit empathetic, and
that might be a lot.
Right, and let them know, that I'm here, and it's such a beautiful thing today. It's such a beautiful thing.
The biggest thing that you can do for people is be empathetic, and it seems like I'm not doing anything. It might be just repeating back your sentences that you're saying, and that can mean the most. I learned how to be empathetic and to connect with people through a 12-step program, learning through the steps. As a part of that, I'm much better at my job. I can have conversations with people where I'm not trying to solve people's problems. I'm just repeating back. Really, it sounds like you're really hurting. It sounds like this is out of your control, and that's making you uncomfortable. It sounds like you're not good with death.
Right.
Nobody's good with death.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel awkward and I don't know what to do. And I had a conversation with this same person today where I said, you should pray for your family member. She mentioned she was religious. So I said, think about praying for them and praying for the things in your life for them that you want for you. And you can let that go because there's no control that you have and how those people feel. And think about it through their mind. There's probably shame in what their mother went through, and your dad's a reminder of that shame. And he's done nothing wrong but be born. But because he was born, there's that feeling of shame that he's different. Now, it's the easiest human emotion to go around and judge. It takes maturity to say, I'm uncomfortable here with you. It reminds me of shame. How can I get past that and get to know you? That's one of the things that we have is you can learn how to handle and be present in terrible emotions that you want to run from, but still deal with it. And not like I'm going to deal with it and then it's going to be better. I'm going to deal with it. It may not be better, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we can't always plan the outcomes, right? We can be there, we can show up, but we can't always plan the outcomes. And one of the things I've learned is that sometimes all I can do, and you said it, it's the small stuff. We talked a little bit about the beginning. It's the small stuff. And one of the things that I've realized, and it always wasn't easy for me. I'm a fixer type of person, right? I like to fix things. I like to control things. So when people would bring me the problems, I would always try to offer solutions and try to fix it. And I still do that sometimes today. But I've learned today, and I do that with my buddy Mike. And we were talking about something recently, and I gave him what I thought was a good solution, and then he talked to somebody else, and they didn't think it was, and I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with that. It's like he's a grown adult, he makes his own decisions, and I told him listen, I know what I'm talking about because it's what I do. Like I know what I'm talking about, but you do whatever you think is right for you, and I can do that today. But one of the things I can do sometimes, and we were talking about our friend Bruce, who was coming to Monday night for a while. He'll come back and do some more. Bruce said something. I was going to a meeting with him a couple of weeks ago, and he said, and it's such a great thing. This is what I love about this program is you get this information. He said, sometimes I have to ask a person when they start talking, do you just want me to sit here and listen?
I've heard him say this.
Right. Or do you want me to offer some advice? I think that's a beautiful question, right? Do you want me to sit and listen? Or do you want me to give you some suggestions, right? Because if you want me, I can do either, right? I can do either. And I was like, wow, that's a great response sometimes when somebody starts dumping. And just ask them, like, what are you looking for? Do you just need air to chew on? Or you're looking for some ideas or help or what? Man, and those are the things I love about this program is like, that's a tool that I can use next time that somebody starts, especially somebody like my wife. Like a lot of times my wife just wants to bitch and complain or whatever, tell me about how she's feeling. She's not looking for a solution. It's a beautiful thing. I could say to her, do you want me to help? Do you want me to do something, or you just want me to listen? And she'll tell me. My wife will tell me what she needs from me.
I generally find 9 times out of 10 that people who are bitching about that or have a problem don't want you to solve it.
I agree.
A good key of them wanting you to help them with their problem in a solution is they'll ask.
Right.
People who want a solution are pretty overt. I know I am. Yeah. If I talk to somebody and say, I have a problem and I need help with it, that's what I say. I have a problem and I need help with it. This is what I need help with. If I'm not saying that, whether I'm conscious of it or not, when somebody tries to solve it for me, I get annoyed.
Yeah.
So most of the time, if people are coming to you and not saying, they're just bitching about something, it really is, you're going to probably be better off just empathizing and not solving it.
I think you're spot on there. I think you're right that most people will say something like, I don't know what to do, right? They'll lead in with something like that. They're looking for some help. And if they're not giving you those signals, then they're not looking for you to help them solve it. They just need to vent. And trust me, I have plenty of times where I just need to vent and just get stuff off my chest, and I don't need anybody to fix it. And there's times where I do need people to fix it, and I call them up, and I do. And, the other thing about our program is we're programmed to ask for help. And today I realize if I need help, I'm not afraid to ask for help today in any, in almost any aspect, but mostly behavioral issues. If I have an issue that's really bothersome or something I need to figure out, or, a feeling that's, a feeling of anger or whatever that's getting on me, then I need to call, I need to get some help with that. For me, that's calling another alcoholic. For other people, maybe doing some therapy work. Whatever works for you is what you need to do, but it's a beautiful part of this program for me.
Modern management fits well with 12-step logic. Modern management philosophies say asking for help is a sign of strength. So if you're struggling with something at work, go and ask somebody for help. Ask a peer, ask somebody on your staff, ask your manager. Go and ask for advice how to do that. That's a sign of strength. If you don't, then don't be mad at anybody but yourself that you failed. That's something that you have to do to get to find recovery in the 12-step groups. And for the most part, even if you're not in a 12-step group getting sober, I don't find many people just drop the drink and have done it totally alone in isolation. Yeah. That even in Instagram communities, it's about helping each other, even if it's only in the comments or in a Facebook group of saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? That is the number one thing, and it's freeing knowing that that's the case. I can bring it into other areas. One of these things that really is great for me is not having to worry about what I'll be drinking or if I'll be drinking, going to a company function, a wedding, big social gathering, just dinner. That would always be on my mind, that if I didn't drink, especially if it was open bar, I felt like I was shorting myself. Mm-hmm. I was ripping myself off by not taking advantage of something. Now it's, okay, because that's off the table, my brain power that would be focused that way is on other things. And I do like sitting in the corner watching people get sloppy and have this, I don't know if this is a defect too, but I have a feeling of superiority when I'm at that picnic or that company outing and I see people getting sloppy and say, it's not me. And I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I've been in several sales meetings where we've gotten together, right? I worked for a big company, so sales meeting brought in people from all around. It was usually, we were in hotels and stuff like that. And it was really interesting to see the guys who went out, and they'd come into the meeting and we'd have all day meetings and they'd be just hung over like crazy. And I would just look at that saying, thank God I don't need to do that. Thank God. And, I have one of these things coming up. I haven't done much. I mean, I haven't been asked to do much with my job, and my boss reached out to me last week and wants me to go to a conference in the July in Arizona. And it is one of those things, right? It's one of those things where, big party, big conference in Arizona, big resort, lots of drinking, lots of partying, all that kind of stuff. Plenty of people don't do that, but plenty of people do. And a lot of the activity revolves around drinking and partying and all. But, I'm glad same thing. I'm glad I don't have to worry about it. I'm glad I don't have to go there and watch myself so I don't make a fool out of myself. I'm glad I don't have to go there and drink in a way that I'm not comfortable drinking. I don't have to drink at all, but I'm like trying to manage it while I'm there. I'm glad I don't have to do any of that. And, we're heading into we're recording this before the 4th of July. We're heading into that holiday. That's a big holiday for a lot of people, right? This whole time. It's a tough time. Summertime in general, maybe something we could talk about next week. Summertime in general can be a tough time. If you're new in sobriety. And, so I'll have a house full of people. Again, nobody drinks to excess. Nobody drinks to excess. But they will be drinking, right? There will be booze in my fridge. There will be, IPAs or hard seltzers. That's what these guys drink. That's what they drink today. They'll be there. And I'm fine with that. Everybody drinks responsibly. They drink in a way that I have no clue, right? It makes no sense to me how they drink.
Right.
That's why it works. Like, they do their thing. I'm okay with it, and everybody has a good time. Yeah, it's great not having to manage any of that really, really bad behavior.
Well, I'm excited that I got sober before hard seltzer. Hard seltzers weren't a thing when I got sober. So I'm old enough to say that I've at least missed one fad that came through.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about what a hard seltzer is and what it's made of or what it tastes like or anything. I totally missed the boat on that, and I don't feel bad. I remember there were times I was dry, and I'd be dry through Oktoberfest, and I feel like I was missing out on something because I didn't have an Oktoberfest. Mm-hmm. Oktoberfest comes and goes, and it's not a big deal. As a matter of fact, I feel good looking at that and saying, that was such a big thing for me.
Right.
When the Oktoberfest beers came out, and it was part of my personality, and now I don't care. Or thinking about, wow, it's warm enough now, the summer ale is out.
Right.
Or the winter beer was out. And now I don't have to worry about that. And I guess it wasn't that big of a deal. It just was a beer. It was a way of enhancing my buzz, not enhancing the time of year.
Absolutely.
It was the opposite. We would love to hear from you. What are the things that made sobriety better than you thought? What were things that surprised you or excite you now or make you feel like this was like so good to get sober because I'm living my life this way that made how I was trying to get through life look pitiful? And I look back and say, why the hell was I drinking to get over this problem when I could have done something different and not have those problems and then open other doors? You can reach me, Matt, at soberfriendspod.com, the website, soberfriendspod.com, on Instagram at soberfriendspod. Could you do us a favor? Can you go to Apple Podcast and write us a review and a rating and tell us what you like? We love your feedback. Or go to Spotify and give us a rating. It lets other people know that, oh, this show's got a lot of ratings. It's got some reviews. I can learn from this. Maybe I should click on this and listen a little bit. Steve, thanks for a great show.
Hey, Matt, thanks. I won't talk to you before the 4th of July. Enjoy the holiday.
You too.
We'll probably talk sometime shortly after that.
We'll do so.
All right,
everybody. Have a great week. See you next week, everybody. You made it this far into the podcast. That tells me you're a pretty big fan. If you like what we do and you find value in the podcast, consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod. Your donation keeps us on the air to help out the new guy and helps us defray some of our costs. If you find value in our podcast, please consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod.